the UN independent expert on foreign debt and international financial obligations and its implications for human rights. I'm an independent expert and I am a member of staff at the University of Nairobi in Kenya, where I'm a professor of fiscal law and policy. And the university lends my time to the United Nations in order for me to give advice to countries across the world. This is my fourth country mission, having been to Argentina, the Bahamas, and I'm very happy to say that after 10 days of intense engagement with all stakeholders, government, civil society, community-based organizations, academics, professors, researchers, as well as members of parliament and different arms of government, environment, finance, foreign affairs, climate. I have managed to have good conversations. Oh, and as well as members of the private sector, I've managed to have very good conversations with all stakeholders. I would like to let you know that I have a report ready. It is already going to be published online and will be accessible in both Portuguese and English. So what was I doing here in Angola? So for the past 10 days, I have been trying to understand how to assist in raising the living standards of children in Angola. The pressure points are born every single year. And in the next few years, you're going to have a population of children that need to go to school. Now, in addition to that, you already have youth that are dropping out of schools. And you will hear as I speak about the life cycle of a person. So when they're born, they need medication and vaccines and healthcare. Their mothers need healthcare. When they go into school and as they grow up to the age of 5, they need food and healthcare. They need clean water. As we move forward, we now add the layer of education and healthcare and food. And finally, when they are adults, we hope that they will now join as a member of an economically productive society. But we cannot expect that of them if we do not provide the enabling factors. And so this is what I was looking at, the enabling factors and the kind of finances that they need to make sure we have healthy and happy human beings. But when I look at the age bracket of those in their 30s and 40s, we have an additional problem. We have people that were involved in the civil war that are still hurting. Conversations have not been concluded. Many people have a lot of issues they haven't yet dealt with. And so there is also need to have interventions for this older generation. Many of them are late in their education. So some of them are still trying to get their first degrees and they're in their 40s. And this is the reality they're living in. As we move into old age, then we need people who also can retire and have social protection. Within this entire life cycle, what we have is a government that has taken on debt and is using oil to pay it off. Unfortunately, it means that not enough money has been used internally in the government. We need to make sure that there is better use of the money. I have had good conversations with government and I have talked to them about 7 principles. Accountability. In accountability, it is that they have budgets, that the budgets are well written, and that people are able to actually access and read the budgets. Unfortunately, although government is giving access to the budgets, what I see is not enough people are downloading the budgets. Not enough people are reading the budgets. So please, the people of Angola, your government is giving you information for them to be held accountable. Hold them accountable. They are being responsible on that particular issue. When we come to issues of responsibility and financing, again, they need to spend the money in a responsible manner. So here too, we need to have conversations with them. There are opportunities to do what is being called participatory budgeting. where you can engage with them. This is very important as well. Now comes the issue of transparency. I have had long conversations with many people across this country. I was both in Benguela and in Rwanda, and I can tell you that the banking system, the private banking system in this country is crippling the ability of people to transact. So this is very important. The banks must complete transactions at maximum within the 24 hours as provided by the law. In other countries in the world, a bank transaction can be done within seconds. So this is possible. Banking transactions need to be facilitated. Bank to bank within the country transactions, from one bank in Angola to another bank in Angola. These transactions can take seconds as well. Transparency is going to be the most important issue for Angola to deal with as regards its banking system if it wants to enter into the international market and diversify the economy as it has been discussing over the past 5 or 6 years. For me, this is very, very critical. All financial transactions need to be released on time. Then comes the issue of efficiency and effectiveness. The banking system, it's also about efficiency. But effectiveness is about targeting of where the money will be spent. For example, the prices of eggs have gone up in the country. This is not good. We need to make sure that cheap sources of protein like fish and eggs, which are important for the development indicators of children and their nutritional survival, are kept at a level which is cost effective. So this is very important as government engages with private sector and engages with the issues of fuel subsidies. The government has assured me that fuel subsidies will stay as they are and will not be removed further, which I think is a very important statement. They have heard the issue and they are taking it very seriously. When it comes to children's health, we also need to look at issues of education. My understanding is that books have to be paid for, that the quality of education is very weak, and it is important, therefore, that we ensure, as people in Angola, that the value of education is maintained. So more spending on those issues, and I have recommended to government to develop a children's budget specifically so that you can see how much is being spent on children. But please remember that I simply make the recommendations. It is now the turn of the people of Angola to speak to their government and to other stakeholders and ask them to actually do as they have said they are going to do. So this is the life cycle approach. But most importantly, what I think is critical is issues of fairness and justice. As a country emerging from not only civil war, but also a country emerging from a difficult previous political regime where a lot of resources were lost, it is very important that the people of Angola renew the decision to trust each other. All the different stakeholders in the economy, all the people of Angola, you have made a decision, you have managed to bring in a new leadership. Now you must trust them, and they must trust you. And it is going to be very hard because there has not been reconciliation post war. So everybody has to keep making that decision. The only thing that I can tell you is that everybody is working very hard, whether it is people without homes living by the beach in Lobito and Benguela, whether it is children living on the streets of Rwanda, whether it is civil society who tell me sometimes their people's roofs are being stolen by thieves because of the level of poverty in the country. There are incredible stories of fear. I see fear of the loss of children, of kidnapping, and so it is very important that everybody work together and take on an element of trust in this process. I thank you very much for being here and for the conversations. Gasikidila, Dapandula, Obrigada. I'm now ready to have any questions or comments you may have.
Muito obrigada, Attiya. Neste momento, a Attiya está aberta a questões. Estejam à vontade.
Boa tarde, Ana Manuel, do desenvolvimento da Angola. Foi muito esclarecedora na sua explanação. Entretanto, eu gostaria que identificasse os problemas prioritários. Falou do sistema bancário, que as transações é um facto, né? As transações são muito lentas e isso interfere certamente na economia. Que soluções podemos apresentar para estes fatores? O sistema bancário ser mais eficaz. Falou também das crianças e também da necessidade de confiança entre os angolanos e na nova liderança. O que é que podemos fazer para mudar a mentalidade das pessoas, não é? Para fazer com que confiem mais entre nós e na nova liderança? São as minhas questões. Muito obrigada.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the questions and for coming. So the solution to the banking problems is a transparency issue. It's also an accountability issue. At the international level, as we speak right now, any countries that don't have a transparent banking system, where transactions are covered within 24 hours or less, these are countries that are now being grey listed by what they call the Financial Action Transparency Task Force. Now, if that happens, then the problem you will have is that transactions, the existing transactions coming into the country may be further blocked. Now, the countries that are blocking this, if your laws are not transparent, if you don't have anti-money laundering provisions and anti-corruption provisions, but also if you don't have beneficial ownership provisions, which is you need to show who owns the company down to the human being. It cannot stop at the trust level or another company level. You need to know the human being that owns the company. If these are not put into place, then you have a very high chance that in October this year, the country will be grey listed. Now, the grey listing means that 25% of all transactions will stay in the country from which they are coming. So if you're sending remittances into the country, 25% may not come in. If you're paying off insurance claims, 25% will not come in. Now, if that happens, and there may be other things that happen as well. If that happens, then companies on average make a profit in between 10 and 20%. If 25% is not coming in, that means they will be operating on a loss and you will have a shutting down of companies. And since the whole aim of the current government is to not only diversify the economy, but also to capture more value chains, you will not be able to bring in foreign direct investment because they know that they will never receive their cash here on time. So the banking system for me is absolutely critical. The second issue, which I think is absolutely critical, is food security. So I had a look at the value chains in the country to try and understand what could be a good starting point. And I will tell you, within a 3 to 6 month period, some of the most important value chain captures that you can do are cassava, palm oil, and salt. You have a history of the sale of salt. In fact, salt was considered money in this country before colonization. So salt is a really good way to bring the people together also. But any person knows in their house, whoever cooks in their houses, they know if you don't have salt, flour, and oil, you don't have what it takes to cook. So you can capture the salt value chain and just not export. Develop bath salts, develop salt for tables, develop saline solutions for medical equipment. Have enough salt to put into cement because it's a critical part of it. So there are different parts of that value chain you can definitely capture, in addition to it being part of food. And of course, cassava flour is a staple food here, and it is an important item to capture as well. Yes, I really like punch, by the way. I like punch. Yes. The third one is palm oil, and palm oil is the oil that can work. You can have other types of oil also, it could be a possibility. And these three are actually priority products that the African Development Bank is also willing to support financially. So there are possibilities there. The government is working very hard on making sure it gets cheaper loans that are more long term. So it's working very hard to do its best, which is why I really think on those certain issues, we must help as much as possible. But I am aware that there are there are children dying in this country because they have not had food to eat. So we need to take this very seriously. I mean, I heard about a little girl who died after 4 days because she didn't get food. This reality, it can change. We can change it. We must change it. There is no option on that. So for me, it is the value chain on these three projects, and it is the banking system. And then the third key thing is what I noticed was, so the government have been very open with me. I'm getting a lot of information. But remember, I'm also asking for the information. I think that there needs to be a very strong communication arm within government to speak to the people in the language they understand. Documents must be in the language that they understand. When laws are being passed or there is a reshuffling of political positions, for example, we must make sure the information reaches everywhere. Now, in communication and the communication infrastructure I talked about, for me, this includes making sure there's electricity, that there is internet access, that people can buy smartphones, or that there is a communication mechanism using USSD codes so that people can receive the information in their phones. It should not be that you must look for the information as a member of, as a citizen or resident. It must mean also government is giving information. So for me, it's about also making sure this outreach is going this way. And then at the same time, the people must also ask and must engage. So I think it is in both ways. Now, the fourth problem would be, for me, would be the issue of employment and skills development. There are programs in different parts of government that are quite good. I think they need to be linked to the Ministry of Education. So even if you don't have your degree yet, the skill can be recognized as a training or vocational training process so that you bridge the skill divide. My concern is that the country may be getting left behind in the changes in digital spaces in the world today. Most of the rural spaces are completely out of reach to the digital revolution. And when there is a pressure point on education, like the country has currently, a smartphone is a very good way of educating yourself. So even if the education system is weak, people who are eager to learn will look for those sources for education. So these are some of the different ones. You asked me about children and the issue of trust. I think that trust is a real weakness in the country. I think everybody still tries very hard to look after themselves and their 6.5 children for women. That is the data. So we are all looking inwards. We must look outwards. We must look outwards at our neighbors. We must look outwards at our community. And then we must look outwards towards government, other stakeholders, and the state. And I will tell you that what I felt from the different stakeholders I spoke to, it didn't matter who I spoke to. Everybody wants to trust. Everybody, but they don't know how. And fear is holding them back. Experiences are holding them back. Living through a war has held them back. COVID affected a lot of people. We need to bridge that divide. And I think if somebody like me can come for 10 days and have this amazing openness from everybody, I think the country is ready to open up to each other as well. Because I don't speak your language. I don't even speak Portuguese. But everybody talks to me. Private sector, public sector, people on the road, civil society, government. You name the person and they talked to me. So I think you're ready. I think you have to try. But I am not Angolan. So Angolans know the best way to try. I hope that that was useful for you. Yes. I'm open to more questions and comments. Okay.
Quero...
Obrigado. Meu nome, não sei se está ligado.
Tá.
Meu nome é Simão Ossi. Eu, na verdade, tenho muitas preocupações. Agora sim. Sim, dizia que meu nome é Simão Ossi. Eu tenho muitas preocupações. Sei que a sua visita a Angola é fruto de um convite feito pelo governo angolano. E, para além de ter vários encontros com vários departamentos do governo angolano, recebeu grupos ligados à sociedade civil, sobretudo a plataforma angolana da cidadania sobre a dívida pública. Mas sei que o seu mandato tem o foco principal nas questões ligadas às mulheres e às crianças. Mas se tivermos que olhar, não sei, pelo que constatou, se tivermos que olhar pelo número crescente da dívida pública angolana, o grupo que trabalha com essa questão da dívida pública aponta para um pouco mais de 60% a dívida pública angolana. E este número só é acrescentado por mais ou menos 30% que é retirado do nosso OGE. Já os especialistas dessa área já começam a achar que a situação começa a ficar complicada. Então, entender a primeira questão. Pelo que lhe foi informado, a posição da dívida pública angolana está na condição normal, numa situação já a passar a linha vermelha, o que é que aconselhou angolano, sim. Nesta condição, o governo angolano nunca pode se endividar. Ou há uma espécie de um deadline, de um limite que até ali já não pode avançar para que não prejudique as gerações futuras. Essa é a primeira questão. A minha segunda A minha segunda questão.
Another question?
Yes. A minha segunda questão é olhar, por exemplo, pela dívida que o nosso governo contrai. Nós temos o o nosso governo tem a maior dívida com a China. E tem também com, por exemplo, o Banco Mundial, o FMI. Mas, por exemplo, nós não somos muito informados sobre o impacto da contração da dívida. Por exemplo, quando o governo vai contrair dívida, nós não somos informados se contrai dívida para que efeito. Olhando para aquilo que tem a ver com o seu mandato, as crianças e as mulheres não são beneficiadas diretamente pelaquela contração da dívida. O que é que o governo angolano terá passado relativamente a essa questão? E se os conselhos, eventualmente, se foram feitos esses conselhos ou recomendações, se o governo angolano está disposto a acatar esses conselhos ou recomendações.
Obrigada. Thank you very much. So, I'm still receiving information from the government, okay? And I haven't seen all the debt agreements yet, but I'm hoping to see them. Whatever it is that the government is allowed to share with me, and I will explain why I say that. So, Angola faces a very difficult situation, which is not unusual. It's happening in many countries across the world right now. Debt agreements are private agreements between the creditor and the debtor when they are between a nation. Unfortunately, that is in the law of those contracts. The contracts say so. The only way, therefore, for a person to see or access these contracts is if there's a leakage, because the governments themselves are also not allowed to release them in public very often, depending on the clauses. And like I said, this is on countries across the world. Okay, so Angola is not an exception. Now, Angola has the secondary problem, which also many other countries in the world have, which is it has inherited the responsibilities of a previous government. So you have a new leadership in place, and the old leadership had made commitments. You're also aware, because it is public knowledge, that a lot of the money from the old regime actually never even stayed in the country. There are court cases across the world. I don't have to remind you as Angolans, money that is outside the government, outside the country, that the government is trying to get back. So there is a second pressure point there. Now, in that second pressure point on money outside the country, I have developed guidelines on the repatriation of state assets, which the government, I believe, intends to use in order to try and get the money back. But in the meantime, it needs to find money to help build the country. So it is stuck because the international system actually doesn't allow it to come out of that problem. Third problem. When you are the market for international goods and services, then taxation should be paid in these different countries. But currently, taxes are only paid in the country where the company is headquartered. So this is a third problem facing all developing countries. The country where the tax is paid, for example, corporate income tax, is the country where the company is headquartered. And there is an action at the UN General Assembly to try and develop a UN tax convention that will hopefully make that change. So these are global issues that Angola should join in on, and I have recommended it. Finally, when it comes to these debtors agreements, we have something called the Paris Club, which is a declaration of, which is a coming together of all the creditors in the world. We don't have the same for debtors. We need the same for debtors. So if Angola owes money and Bahamas owes money and Liechtenstein owes money and Argentina owes money, or then Honduras owes money, then everybody can see the kind of clauses that are in all of these agreements to see if you're the same economy, you should have the same type of provisions. Right now, Angola doesn't know what other countries owe and why they owe it. So while there are these internal problems, There are problems of the country on the management that they have inherited and what they are trying to fix. There are also these global problems that are not helping. So it has to be effort from both the domestic level and it has to be effort at the international level also. So this is the broad debt framework that we're dealing with globally. Previously, my mandate has requested that there be a international debt architecture. There isn't even a place to go and say, I don't agree with this agreement, the interest rate was bad, can we renegotiate? There's nowhere to go for that. There are no laws on that internationally. So you can imagine the kind of pressure and strain a country goes through where there's no laws to guide you and you need money. Can be almost held hostage sometimes to the person offering you money. And I will give you an example. Angola's previous debt was at about 8%. Now it was floated in the secondary markets. This is their Eurobonds. 8 or 9, between 8 and 9%. It was being floated in the secondary markets, and now because Angola has been paying off its debt, international investors think Angola is a very good country to invest in. The interest rate there has got to 12 to 13%. So now if Angola wants to borrow money because they've been good at repaying, now they have to pay more. Do you see the problem in the system? Just because you're good at it, you're reliable, you become attractive to investors, your rates go up. And that's gone up by 5%. That's a lot of money. For anybody who has tried to take a loan, 5% is a big jump up. So these are the challenges that the country is facing. And like I said, they were very open. They really talked to me. So how can we change the situation? This is why I come back. Trust, fairness, treat people with each other with fairness, be understanding of what is restricting them, be efficient with your money, be effective with your money, but be transparent, accountable, and responsible. So, and it's not just for government to be that. Private sector must be held accountable. They must become transparent, especially the banking system. For me, I cannot stress enough how the banking system is going to be one of your core solutions if you can sort it out. Your domestic banking system. Because of the problems in the transaction times, people are moving to the informal markets and the cash economy to do forex transactions. If the banking system was working properly, that would not be happening. Okay, and then the banks would be making more money because they would be doing more transactions, which is legal. You know, it's legal money, it's legal profit, it's legal revenue. We need to fix that system very much. Now, you asked about what would be the measure of the amount of debt you can take on. I told you that you've inherited debt that has to be honored. And I believe that the last debt that was taken in by the previous regime, I may be wrong, but I will check when I finish getting the data, was 2030. So until 2030, you need to give your government a bit of time. Now you will tell me, no, it's too far away. That is in 6 years. But that is the debt they've inherited. So they have to be given, you have to take off the pressure a little bit, but then help them in delivery. And at the same time, I've asked them to think about how to renegotiate some of those debts so that all the money that they're taking for oil doesn't go in repayment of debt. That some of the oil money should come back into the country, for example, and be used to do some little bit of development as they go along, so that you're doing the balance and the trade-off. But you have to be ready as Angolans. You have to pay taxes. Individual people have to go and register for income tax. And I know it is scary because if you're in the formal economy, you already have other issues you're dealing with. I heard a very interesting phrase, Sakazul. Ah, there we go. No need for translation of Sakazul. The blue bag. So there you go. Sakazul. Yes. So I understand. I really understand. But that is why I tell you, you have to make the decision to commit. And you have to make the decision to commit and take the risk. You have to take a really big risk. You made the risk when you voted in your elections. I am not idealistic. I'm very practical. I understand the different politics in the country. But you have to keep at it. You cannot let go. You cannot say, I voted in my government and then I've done my job. You need to keep going because otherwise you'll have a problem. So how much can they take on? Right now, I would not encourage the government to take on a new debt. At this point in time, I think they have to find a way to spend a little bit more money on the people. And I think that they are trying to, but it is not visible. So I have also talked to them about making sure that the finances that they spend on the people must be visible. If you improve the salaries of the teachers, it must be in the news. It must be in the newspapers. If you're going to make sure children get free milk in the schools, which is so important, your school feeding program is very, very poorly managed right now, then you must broadcast and advertise so people know it. So they must own their activities, but they must share it. So I think it has two parts. They're doing some things, then they are not doing others yet because of their budget limitations, right? But they are also not sharing so well with the country, which I've asked them to do. Obrigada. My name is Matthew. I'm from the Portuguese Museum in Samusa. And I'd like to know if you also made an evaluation about human rights issues and what's your conclusions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, my focus for this visit was actually the rights of children. So what I think is very important is that there be child-based budgeting. So it's very clear how much is being spent on these 1 million children that are being born every year. I had long conversations with the government about how to support food programs, about how to build the value chain so that they are food self-sufficient as quickly as possible, but also how to build in the education system. And those has been the focus that I've looked at. One of the things that struck me are the numbers of children on the street, whether it is in Luanda or it is outside. And I think this is also something we have to take cognizance of. So I have asked them to consider building a birth registry so that everybody has papers. That's very important so that you can track and trace them. I've also heard of numerous incidents of not just lost children, but child trafficking and kidnapped children, some of which I believe are ending up in mines across the continent and in some cases outside the country. And again, there needs to be a systematic registration of children so that you can track and trace them. And I think that this is very important. I also think that it's part of the trust deficiency in the country. Communities don't necessarily inform the government or the police services when a child goes missing. So we need the police and the security services to take on a very positive and community-based approach to the spaces where they occupy. Because for me, this is a very, very big problem. These 1 million children a year that are being born really need to be protected. They have assured me that it is their focus. They're already developing citizens-based budgets, which I saw actually today. And they've been pushing for participatory budgeting, which I also think is very good, which means that the community decides how money is spent, and hopefully there will be more children-based interventions in that. But I'm also still waiting for additional information. So my final report for all of you to know, my final report should be ready latest by October or November this year and will be in the public domain by January next year. And then I will physically present the report at the Human Rights Council in Geneva. So there is still process ongoing, and any gaps in my knowledge or any errors or mistakes are of course my own, as I await for more documentation to come into government. But what I have spoken of are things that I have actually seen. if I have not specifically answered questions, it's because I have not received all the data yet, and I don't want to say things that are not accurate. So on the issue of debt, I have not received it. So I cannot specify for you what the percentage should be. Obrigada.
What do you think are the chances of Angola going back to the gray list in October?
Okay, so I mentioned this in the beginning already. If they do not fix the banking system and make sure that the banks in this country start transacting at international standards, which is within 24 hours, which is the law here, for all transactions, and I believe domestic ones specifically, and I think internationally global transactions are up to 2 to 3 days. If they do not do this, there is a very strong possibility of being grey listed. So transparency is critical. It's not just about the law being passed, it's actually about making sure they enforce it. So the banking sector really needs to get its act sorted out in this country. The private banking sector right now, I think, holds the responsibility to resolve the core section of Angola's problems. Thank you very much. I'm still open to more questions.
As perguntas?
Oui, oui, ça va. Oui, oui, je parle français. Mais il faut parler un peu lentement pour moi, s'il vous plaît. Oui.
Un peu plus haut. Là, donc, j'aimerais savoir, madame, d'abord l'objectif de votre visite à Angola.
Oui.
Et puisque votre programme, c'est concentrer sur les femmes et les enfants.
Donc, sous les enfants.
Sous
Sous les enfants, oui.
Ouais. Alors là, nous aimerions savoir, madame, quels sont les programmes que vous avez pour venir en aide aux femmes et aux jeunes filles dans des situations vulnérables à Angola.
Okay. Merci, mais je vais répondre en anglais parce que les autres, oui, mais peut-être après, parce que les autres ici ne parlent pas le français. I will respond in English.
Better to respond in English, maybe?
No, that's what I just said.
Okay, thank you so much.
I will respond in English and then maybe later I can speak to you in French, no problem. Okay. So the question the journalist has posed is, what are the main problems that are facing women and children that I noticed? I noticed cases of protein deficiency, what is called kwashako. A lot of children in informal settlements have golden hair, which is a sign of a lack of protein. So not eating fish or eggs or meat or legumes. So for me, this was one problem I saw of children. The second thing I saw in the data is that they still have very, very high mother-to-child transmission of HIV. And this is preventable also. I believe the drugs are freely accessible for mother-to-child to prevent mother-to-child transmission of HIV. In addition to that, I heard numerous cases of vaccines not being available, especially the ones at early childhood stage, so the triple vaccine as well as polio. So this is also very important, and this is part of the problem of all the children on the street and the homeless children and the runaways. All of these 1 million children are not going back into medical clinics. Of course, they cannot, to get these vaccines. And I think an idea of doing an outreach would be better from the healthcare centers out into the villages and the communities. So vaccines are a problem. The quality of food they're getting is definitely a problem. Mothers I believe are not getting good nutrition when they're pregnant. And as a result, you have a problem with childbirth, and the protection and the provision of medical services at childbirth are not very strong. I've heard numerous cases of families that sleep outside at night, outside medical clinics, waiting to be told by the doctors what medicine the sick person needs, and then they go running to go and find it. And if they have no money, they don't buy it. And the person does not recover. And these are real problems. So we need to make sure there is medication in the system, because right now it is a real problem from what I can tell. When it comes to the education system, there are not enough schools, there are not enough teachers, and the quality of education is not good. And Angolan students that were in the lockdown during COVID have not been able to recover. So we also have that problem of education. So these are the different things that I noticed, in addition to living in some very poor, unhygienic situations, even in the capital, where homes don't have electricity, water, or garbage collection. And this, for me, this is not okay. You don't want to have outbreaks of things like cholera. You need cleanliness, you need hygiene. I also noticed that I don't see a lot of people with, I know we don't like them also where I come from, but mosquito nets. I don't see a lot of mosquito nets or actions to destroy mosquitoes in the area, which means you have malaria, you have dengue fever, and we need to really look at that very, very seriously. So, the government has big challenges. So that is why I say everybody must help. Whatever you do, don't turn around and say, you must do this. You have to keep saying, we must do this. Because that will be the only way you will find your way through this problem. Obrigada. Later I will speak to you in French. Oui. De rien.
Fazer uma questão, né?
Oui.
Os colegas querem entrevistar à parte, mas depois também vai haver essa oportunidade. Sim, sim, pois não.
Please let us finish.
Ok.
Please. Yeah.
Não, é uma pena que não teve, pelo que explicou, não teve a oportunidade, para além de Luanda e Benguela, eventualmente não teve a oportunidade de ir ao interior, ao interior.
Yeah.
E, sobretudo, na zona sul da Angola, há muito que a sociedade civil pede que o governo da Angola pudesse decretar um estado de emergência por causa da fome, resultado das alterações climáticas. E é uma realidade que eu conheço muito bem, porque eu toco essas questões sobre as fronteiras da Angola com a Namíbia, e eu vi muita gente com crianças a sair da Angola para ir à Namíbia, fugindo da fome. No seu caso, neste caso, há uma possibilidade, não sei, a nível do governo convencer, não sei se seria essa expressão convencer ou não o governo, porque são zonas longínquas, porque, para além dessa questão da fome, o direito à educação das crianças já não se coloca mesmo, porque as crianças, mesmo quando vão para essas zonas, o que lhes importa é conseguir ter o que comer. Como é que se poderia fazer para que se pudesse efetivamente decretar o estado de emergência para essa zona, já que existem mesmo crianças que estão mais, a questão da malnutrição nessas zonas, do sul da Angola, Nene, Huila, Namibe, Quantibango, é muito grande. E também a questão, para terminar mesmo, a questão da merenda escolar. Das mais de 2.000 escolas que eventualmente existem no país, os dados que eu tenho, só 70 escolas é que se beneficiam da merenda escolar. Quer dizer, a maioria não se beneficia. Isso contribui relativamente no aprendizado das crianças. Como resolver essa situação? Ou o que se pode aconselhar para resolver essa situação?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much. So you're absolutely right. So normally when the UN brings me into a country, it only authorizes 2 spaces. So I was authorized for Luanda, and then we chose Benguela. But we chose Benguela very specifically because I wanted to see how the economy could be diversified with the infrastructure coming in. So it was chosen for a very clear position. I have had a conversation with the government, and I hope they will bring me back in again to the United Nations, because they're also quite keen for me to try and understand better these other spaces, And they seem to also appreciate the approach and the kind of ideas I'm trying to share. So I think not the end of it, for you to know. I'm aware of the drought down in the south. I heard a lot about the drought, and my heart, it was breaking when I was hearing how bad the drought is. I have made suggestions because although you are going through severe climate change down in the south, you also have a very big water table under the country. And so I think it is possible to drill down and start to have water from below the earth if you don't have a standard rain cycle in future. I've also made suggestions for other entities like the African Union who can provide different types of support to the government, and they seem very open to exploring those suggestions.